Hey everybody, how are you guys doing tonight? We are getting ready for our Safe and Sound Challenge Day 1. Woo! We are going to be having some very, very exciting speakers that are second generation. They're Gen Z. They're able to share what they're encountering online right now in video games and Discord servers and YouTube kids, and really getting us into the nitty gritty of what is facing people under the age of 20 today through fighting trafficking. So go ahead and get in, grab your water, grab your coffee, whatever you need, and we'll be getting started here in just a moment or two, and hoping this weather.
Yes, we're hoping that the storm doesn't affect the stream. So if something happens, it's Florida and streams happen.
Yes,
We'll
Storms
log back in.
storms happen. Yes. All right, guys. So let us know if you're here in the chat, and we'll be getting this uploaded for us. But first, let's see. Go ahead and invite somebody that you know that needs to hear this. That's not just from me. I forgot to turn the volume down, folks. All right. So, hello. It's good to see you. We did have 2 places you can stream today's thing, so whether that's on LinkedIn or whether that's on YouTube, we're very excited to be able to bring this to everyone and share, just kind of getting them on and live and ready to go for you. So let us know, are you watching on LinkedIn or are you watching on YouTube? I'm curious. And if you can let us know, where did you hear about this? Was it in the email? Did you find it on our Facebook page? Was it on our website?
All right. We are recording this with Luca and Sabina.
What just happened? Oh, we both did it at the same time.
Oh,
That's why.
okay. That's funny. So we'll be here in just a second. Okay, so you're watching on YouTube, and we're getting into the nitty gritty of our LinkedIn as well. All right, so now we're able to look at the comments both places. All right, so you're watching on YouTube Messenger. Interesting. Very cool. All right, so we are going to be having 2 speakers that are very exciting for us. They are officially our youngest speakers to date, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So it'll be just a few more seconds. Thank you guys for letting us know where you're watching and where you initially heard about us. Oh, heard about it on Messenger. Cool.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, hello. We're very excited. Make sure you like the video, that you share this with anybody that you know is in the fight to end human trafficking. If they are parents of children, if they're themselves under the age of 20, there's going to be some really good information in this challenge. Now, in order to get the link for tomorrow, you either have to sign up on the Brave Fan site. just because we are very intentional not to spam our email list. We don't really want people to feel like they shouldn't open every email. So if you're interested, please sign up on the website, which is in the description box below, or on thebringfreedom.org, and then it's Safe Sound Challenge.
Yes.
Yep.
What else? Oh, I went ahead and created an event on Facebook, and so I'll be sharing the links to each live stream on YouTube from there. So if you have friends on Facebook and that's their primary means of being connected, go ahead and join that event on our Bring Freedom page. Also, that's just another resource. I know not everybody does LinkedIn, and so it's available, and if you just register, we'll just get it out to you.
Awesome.
All right. Well, let me know.
All right. Are we ready to kind of dive in?
Yeah.
With our first two guests? Would you like to do the introduction?
All right. Well, I think I did a little intro.
Okay, perfect.
There, so I'll just go ahead and
we'll get them in. I can do it from here if you want.
Okay.
To Voices of the Youth that we're featuring. All right, we are recording this session with Luca and Sabina, our two Voices of the Youth that we're featuring for the Safe and Sound Challenge. And I've asked them to share some things they've encountered online, some concerning stuff, just some things they've seen, and I've pretty much just asked them to share their own experiences and things that they've noticed or heard from friends of theirs. So I'm going to hand it off to Luca and Sabina.
All right. You want to go first? Okay. So my name is Luca Canuso. I am 17 years old currently. I think it was a year ago or so. I spent a lot of time on this app called Discord, which is a gaming and chat room where a bunch of people can come together on a voice call or a video call, and they can game together or they can talk to each other. It's full of different servers that people can create themselves. It's a very big app with a lot of people on it. And the main audience on that app are usually minors or children, but there are some adults on there that record their gaming sessions, and so on and so forth. But when I spent my time on it, I did a lot of podcasts of talent shows or a bunch of weird topics that were just fun for the audience. And in those podcasts, you would see a lot of people, and they found these podcasts very interesting. But during these podcasts, you could see anyone that you want, any user, and you could click on their username and go into their DMs and message them. And it was, you wouldn't even know them, and they would message you, and that can be pretty dangerous. So I'm going to go over the dangers of what I've experienced so far on that app, Discord. So pretty much on Discord, you'll get a lot of teenagers, kids, and they'll express their feelings or emotions. And sometimes some of these kids could feel depression, they could feel sadness or grief, and someone online could take real advantage of that. It could be some 40-year-old man messaging this 15-year-old girl, and he could just say, "Oh, I'm 14 too, and I'm depressed, but I think I can help you if we help each other," so on and so forth. You would encounter a lot of strangers online, and if you aren't careful with that, it could lead into dangerous situations. We've had a lot of older people, mainly consisting of men, going on there and messaging a bunch of children, girls, boys, and they could do whatever. They could send them pictures of whatever they want. And sometimes, if you weren't careful, they could actually pull your address. Even if you didn't tell them, they could, if you clicked on a link that they sent you, they could pull your IP address and they could find out where you live, and they could blackmail you. They could do whatever they wanted, as long as they put fear in these kids' minds and tell them that if you don't do this, I'll do this and send this, so on and so forth. It could lead into a dangerous situation where your kid wasn't careful enough about who they were talking to. Now, me personally, I've met a lot of young women on there that are extremely vulnerable, that are extremely uncareful and too trusting. And of course, I've never done anything terrible like how other older men would. But all these girls would talk to me and tell me of all these terrible experiences that they would encounter on Discord. About a bunch of older men would message them and send them lewd pictures, and it was disgusting. And these kids never told their parents about what they were doing or who they were talking to, because sometimes the kids don't know. So I'm talking to the parents right now. If your child is on social media, if they have an electronic device, access to the internet, and they're talking to a lot of friends, be sure to check up who they're talking to. Make sure to set up safety devices for them. Make sure that who they're talking to is a safe person, and that you verify that they are a safe person. Because if you don't, these kids could encounter a lot of dangerous activity, and it could lead them into dangerous situations. Now, if your child was experiencing a lot of strong emotions like depression, sadness, or grief, strangers is the last person, the last people that you want your child talking to. They could open up about their feelings and their heart. They could open up about how sad they were, and that stranger could take advantage of that and make them believe that they're a good person, and then they do terrible things to those children. And I've encountered is honestly disgusting. But through time, I learned to avoid certain areas of the app, avoid talking to certain strangers. I would only talk to my friends on there. I'd pretty much avoid everything. But I was once in charge of a server that hosted a lot of podcasts, and there would be a lot of weird people on there, and there wasn't much I could do except for kick them out of the server. So meeting those people, they could go in the server, go in the chat, and just send a lot of lewd stuff, or they could be swearing like a sailor in the chat, and they'd be showing off all these kids, all these words, or all these pictures, and it wouldn't be good for these kids because they'd see it and then it's a dangerous situation. So if your kid is on social media, be sure to check up who they're talking to, what they're looking at. Make sure that you set up safety devices and safety parental locks. So that way your kids can't go searching up things. That way you're making sure that who your kid is talking to is a safe person. Now, I've met and made a lot of friends on Discord. I'm not saying it's a terrible app. I'm saying if you're not careful, you can find a lot of terrible people. And there's a lot of terrible people in the world. Regardless, you're going to meet a bunch of terrible people. But I think as adults and as parents especially, it's our duty and our responsibility to make sure that our kids are safe. Now, I don't have any kids, but I was a kid when I was doing this, and my parents didn't know who I was talking to. And I didn't say anything. I didn't really care because I was a guy and I could handle it. But I still met a lot of weird people. And the owner of the server that I was working for, he was a pedophile. He would message me. He would try and flirt with me. He was very sick, and I left. I blocked him, and I was careful to avoid that. But not a lot of kids know that. So if you're not careful with who your kids are talking to, or what platforms your kids are on, they're going to be exposed to a lot of dangerous topics, a lot of dangerous pictures, or dangerous people. Especially when those people have the capability to hack into your child's account and find out where your kid lives. That could lead into serious, dangerous encounters, because if someone goes to your house saying that they know your kid, or someone goes to your house while you're not home and your kid's there alone, who knows what could happen. But there's a lot of dangerous topics that your kids could be exposed to on these platforms. Twitter, Instagram, Discord, like I said, even YouTube is full of a lot of sick stuff that you have to make sure that your kids are censoring, that your kids are avoiding. And it's even the most common, what you would think, safe platforms. It's everywhere. You have to make sure that you're safe, your kids are safe, and that what they're viewing is censored and family friendly. And do you want to go? You've encountered?
Say one of the majorly dangerous platforms for children to be on for social media or talking to friends is Snapchat. I feel as though the app has a lot of functionality and techniques that people can use throughout the app just to prey on children. I do know a person that did encounter someone sending them inappropriate pictures of themselves just within like 2 minutes of talking to this person that they just met. They will make up any excuse on the internet. Any person will say any type of normal thing like, oh, I just thought your name was interesting and I wanted to talk to you, or oh, I have the same name, I thought your picture was cool, I was looking for someone else and came across you. Anything where it's just a random person talking to you out of nowhere with the strangest excuse, or even if it seems oddly way too normal, it's best to just avoid those people in general. I think on any platform where you're able to talk to people and make friends, you should stick to only family and friends that you've met personally. Another big problem, I'd say, is that a lot of parents are very trusting of YouTube Kids for their toddlers and their 4-year-olds or middle schoolers to watch on. And I'm just going to say right now that people do put porn on YouTube Kids. A lot of people use child characters or characters from Disney things, Marvel things, and as long as it looks drawn and cutish or bubbly or colorful or looks like a kid's TV show or movie character, YouTube will put it into YouTube Kids, regardless of what the content is, because they don't actually look at it. All they know is that it has to do with something childish. They tend to put like slime channels onto YouTube Kids, but people will speak with like adult language in their slime videos because adults do slime content and whatever, make toys, make inappropriate jokes. I think even with the channels that have the most subtle adult jokes, you should block and make sure that your child isn't watching any of that, because it will lead to something else and something much worse for that kid. Because if there's anything that they don't understand that is adult, they will likely eventually search it up and learn more about it and go down a rabbit hole. And I'll be honest, just even going on Google and searching up the most simple thing, like something on Star Wars or something like with Disney, click on a few pictures, keep going in rabbit hole, it'll turn to porn in like a minute or two.
Mm-hmm.
Google is extremely unsafe for any child, as well as YouTube Kids and YouTube and Snapchat. So I'd say before letting your kid watch YouTube Kids, make sure you look through everything. And I think picking like a few channels that you know are safe for that kid and you let them watch only those channels would be the best choice.
And in that regards, again, like she said, Google's dangerous, YouTube is dangerous, and without the proper sensors or child locks on it, they're access to everything. So if you know how, if you're going to give your child a device, make sure that there's a safety on it, a sensor on it, and a parental lock on it. If you don't know how, you can go to YouTube, search it up, how to put a parental lock on this website, this browser, or this app. You can set up a safety lock that way, no matter what your child searches up, it won't show anything inappropriate, anything lewd, or dangerous. Most of the time, these platforms take very careful steps into making sure that what their platform is safe and family friendly. But it can be bypassed, it can be avoided by these people, especially in a today where we're acceptant of a little too much. Things can be exposed to your kids, and your kids will be confused, they'll be interested, and they'll look things up. They'll search, and they'll try to learn these things that you don't want them to learn. So if you want my advice, make sure that you're taking proper safety steps for when you're giving your child a device and when your child is access to internet and social media. Make sure that you're setting a parental lock, a sensor, and if it's necessary, if your child is spending too much time on the device, you can actually set up a certain amount of time for your kid to spend on that device. You can go into settings, you can set a certain time and for how long that they can be on that device. Or if you want to be very specific, you can actually set how long you spend on apps or web browsers. If your child is watching too much YouTube, you can set a certain time for them. Maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 30 minutes, your choice. But you don't want them to have access to that too long, and you don't want them to have access to everything, especially if you take very good care in your child and you don't want them exposed to certain topics or dangerous encounters. On that, I think we said everything, but we have a lot of personal experience and a lot of personal issues with these apps, these web browsers. But in the end, just make sure that you're monitoring your child and what they're doing on their device, on apps, and on the internet, because social media is a very dangerous place.
Well, I think another thing, like back on what you were saying about children, if they're going through difficult phases in their life, like puberty can be really hard for a child, or if they're grieving over a lost one, if they have signs of depression or just emotional sensitivity, going to the internet can, like he said, lead to people taking advantage of it, like older people, but a lot of kids and teenagers have those same feelings, and they go on the internet and they congregate together on the internet, on the servers, and talk to each other. And being in a community with other teenagers that are all mentally ill or have mental health problems is not going to be good for your kid at all. Other kids will destroy other kids in ways that they don't even mean to. They will encourage people to act on their depression.
Yeah, if your child is experiencing any sort of dark emotion that they don't understand, you do not want them surrounded by other kids experiencing that, because the more and more you're surrounded by it, the more and more you think it's okay, the more and more you think it's some sort of trend, and they won't want to get better because everyone else is feeling the same way, and these kids are saying that it's okay, it's fine, and the more and more they're surrounding themselves with those people, the more and more that they're going to feel those emotions, the more and more they're going to act on certain things. I have personal experience with stuff like that. It was a group of a bunch of kids, boys and girls, experiencing a lot of depression, grief, and sadness. And they would talk about how they wanted to kill themselves or hurt themselves or just do anything that would inflict damage upon their bodies and lead into a very terrible death. And you don't want that for your kid.
Or even harming their own family members or certain people in their lives that they have negative feelings towards.
Right. I
I
mean,
mean, on the internet, I have been shamed for telling someone that they shouldn't kill themselves. People will shame me for doing that.
they will. If these kids don't want to get better, if they're surrounded by a bunch of kids feeling the same way. And so when someone tries to come in and help them, they won't accept it. So if your kid is going through a hard time, if you know it, do your best to talk to them, even if they don't want to, even if they say, oh, I'm okay, I'm fine. Sometimes that's just a cry for help. Sometimes that could be them saying that they're fine, but on the inside, they're saying, I'm torn apart in pieces and I need someone to talk to. And sometimes your kid will want to talk to someone else about certain things that they don't want to talk to you about. And that's fine, but you have to make sure that you set boundaries and teach them exactly what they're talking about and how much they should be talking about and who they're talking about it with. If your son or daughter has a very close friend that you know that you've met in person, make sure that whatever they're talking about, they're setting limits on what they're talking about and make sure that they know what they're talking about. That way their friend can help, and that way you can help their friend try to help your child.
Another thing that can help is if your child has a friend on the internet that you're not entirely sure about, but your child really trusts this person and is very passionate about their relationship and friendship. A good thing that can help you begin to trust that person is to be a part of video calls with that person with your child. So it can help to have more of a personal connection with that person.
Right.
So you know that you can trust them around your child.
So get to know your child, make sure that you know what they're doing, who they're talking to, and what they're looking at. And I think that's everything. I think that's all we have to say.
All right. Well, that was really good. I'm glad that you shared that about depression and how that they're kind of feeding into each other, because that also kind of links to something I was reading today about this new, I shouldn't say new, but it's a trend that is getting worse and worse, that kids think it's normal to take what they're calling, I can't think of the terminology, but they're taking like explicit pictures of themselves to share, right? And how it's like become normal,
Yeah.
self-generated, and they think it's totally normal to be sexting each other, basically.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of personal experience with that. Random strangers, random girls I don't know would send me a lot of pictures and talk me up and try to have some sort of thing. And sometimes that could be just a call for attention or need for love, or maybe they don't feel like they're worth anything. So the last thing that they have is their body. And that can be manipulation from someone else that objectified that person.
Hmm.
And so that person thinks it's okay and normal, and it's really not. And is your job to make sure that they know how important they are, and how, oh, what's the word? I can't think of it, but make sure that they know that they're not just a body, not just an object, and make sure that they aren't being talked to by some stranger that's telling them that that's okay.
Right. And I know that I talked to you guys about, I don't like this term, but sextortion,
Right.
where usually an underage person is sharing a picture of themselves nude or whatever. And then the person who received it, sometimes it's another kid, but sometimes it's an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And they use that as like blackmail.
Yeah, that leads
and
down
then
to danger.
and it can lead in many bad directions. But I talked to you guys because I read a story about a kid this happened to, and he was a normal, happy kid before this happened, and he ended up committing suicide because he didn't see a way out. And I think it's important not only for parents to be aware of this stuff, but it's also important to have these open dialogues. Like the kids need to feel safe to talk to you about these things, and they need to know that you love them no matter what. No matter what they did, no matter what happened, no matter what these people are threatening, you're a child. It is not your fault. Okay?
Right.
And we will deal with it. And I'll be sharing some resources to report that stuff, and also some protections to put in place. But I think the biggest thing, and we obviously, you guys have done stuff on the internet that I don't know about, and that's why I wanted you guys to share your personal experiences. But it's important to have the open communication. It's also important to do what you can to protect. But I think, obviously mistakes have been made. But we can all share our learning experiences to help others, right? And that's what's important about this community of helping each other protect more kids, right?
It's very important.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd say that one of the number one rules with being on the internet as a minor, or even as an adult, never accept nudes, never send nudes, especially if there's a minor involved in any way.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had good parents to teach me that, because I told them about my experiences and encounters, and my dad, he would tell me, no matter what happens, no matter what you're doing, don't send any nudes, because later on as an adult that can be used against you. It can lead into a lot of legal stuff. It's just very terrible encounter that you want to avoid altogether. So like Sabina said, don't give out nudes, don't accept nudes, don't give out your full name, do not give out your information, personal information, your address, and most importantly, don't click on any links from any strangers, because that actually can lead into them pulling your IP address and then finding out precisely where you live. So it's very dangerous.
That's good information. I hadn't thought about sharing that one. So thank you guys.
Of course. I was happy to do it.
Am I gonna remove that one? Sorry, you do it.
Hey guys. First of all, thank you so much to Luca and his sister,
Sabina,
being comfortable with sharing with us and sharing vulnerably. And I mean, you can tell from their conversations that this was not a one-time thing that was talked about with them. This was not something that, was awkwardly brushed over, where you're like, you're not doing anything dumb on the internet, right? You know what I mean? Like, you can hear specifics that were talked about and how important that is. So they're not, blindsided.
Right, exactly.
So.
I have a couple things I want to share, and then I'm going to share those resources I mentioned. Because we recorded that last night because they're in a different time zone, and I wasn't sure how that was going to work out tonight. So, first, here's a sobering statistic. More than 29 million reports of suspected child sexual exploitation are received by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children annually.
That's crazy.
That's over 500,000 per week reported. That's just what's reported, right? Same organization, the NCMEC, they have published data from 2013, and I know that was 10 years ago, but it said that 18% of child sexual abuse material, CSAM, that content, 18% of it was stemming from online enticement. My guess is that percentage is higher now.
Oh,
Would
yeah.
you guess that? Okay. 1 in 5 children are solicited sexually while on the internet before the age of 18. And this is from the National Children's Alliance nationwide child abuse statistics. 1 in 5, that's 20%. And of course, this is all that's reported. So not everything is reported, obviously. But here's hope. 95% of sexual abuse is preventable through education. And that is why we do what we do, right? So here are those resources I'm going to share right now. This is red flags to watch for and to talk to your kids about. And these are when they're being contacted online, usually by strangers. Because this is the modern stranger danger. Online communication. And that online communication can come through any social media, any apps that have messaging, video games. I've even seen a report that it was happening with messaging within a Bible app. So that's how bad it is now, right? Okay, so these are red flags to watch for from thorn.org. And these are things you can talk to your kids about. Flattery, gifts, and that could be money. It could be pretend money within a game. It could be pretty much anything. Gifts, modeling job offers, asking for personal information. That's a huge red flag. Isolation. They will literally drive a wedge between your child and the people that are actually in their lives. Secret conversations. Sending explicit material. Requests for sexual photos. And threats. And that goes back to the sextortion that I was talking about. Which I really don't like that term, but how do I go to the next? There we go. Sorry. How to report all information regarding possible child sexual exploitation should be reported to the platform where it's happening, where it's found, as well as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, because your child may not be missing. They could be in their bedroom. They could be in your home, and this is happening to them. It's exploitation, right? If you feel under immediate threat, you should call 911. Your local police will get involved. And luckily, nowadays, there are task forces and specialists in that field, right? Next slide. How to protect your kids. First, talk to your kids about online perpetrators and how they operate. That's why I had the previous slide. Talk to your kids, and it can't be a one-time conversation. It has to be over and over and over again, because things are always changing and your child is developing, and your own education is developing also. So it should be an ongoing conversation. So it's not weird when you bring it up and when you ask them questions. They know why you're asking, and they appreciate you being in their life and caring about them. Okay? Tell your child you always have their back. It is not their fault no matter what happens. They are a child. And you will always love them, and you will always protect them. And you will do your best to report anything that may be happening or could happen, right? Third, integrate monitoring software. Sometimes it's a service, sometimes it's a software, but there is a digital safety net. It's not foolproof. But if you integrate these things, I put 3 examples on here. Arc is really good because it monitors stuff for pornographic content, but it also monitors for bullying and self-harm and stuff like that. So that's a kind of good overall thing and is recommended by thorn.org. They kind of have a partnership. Covenant Eyes is also excellent. Custodio. Those are just 3 of the many that are out there. And many of the devices have built-in integrated software also. We all need to educate ourselves on that. So that is all. And I'll be looking to answer any questions in follow-up sessions also. But this will be, we're happy to make these things available and just to open up some conversations on these. So I am going to hand it off to Zona, who has the next teaching, and I'm really excited to hear what she's going to say. Right.
Hey guys. All right. How are you doing? How are you feeling after that first presentation? Go ahead and let us know in the comments. Did you learn something new? So if you can let us know, did you hear something for the first time that Luca and Sabina had shared? What is your takeaway from our first session and officially our first Gen Z presenters?
Yeah.
So pretty exciting.
He actually commented in there. This is Luke who commented. So he actually was able to jump on. So if you did have questions for Luca and Sabina, it looks like Luca is on, and he also validated what I said, so that's good.
Yes. So guys, he is available in the chat. So if you do want to send in some questions, he's tooting his own horn right now. But that's a good thing. We want people to be able to share their real experiences. And part of what we're doing with having some of these trainings is, if you always hear me say something, you're not getting the experience from somebody who we're supposed to be protecting. We're supposed to be standing alongside them. We're supposed to be in partnership for their safety. And these are those pieces that it can't just be from my generation. It can't just be from, boomers. It has to be all of the people coming together to form a network that actually ends this together through education that leads to action. So go ahead and send in any questions you have for Luca. I am going to go ahead and start sharing mine, but he'll be replying in the comments, at least for a couple more minutes. And that way you guys still have access to ask good questions. So today I'm actually going to be presenting on something that just recently came out the beginning of this month, which is the 2022 Federal Trafficking in Persons Report. So we want to take a look at what is the state of anti-trafficking in the United States right now. What are things that we're seeing? Part of our event is sounding the alarm. What are the things that are cropping up that we need to be able to respond to in order to identify people faster, to prevent people being trafficked or exploited in these ways, to be able to shorten any exposure, at least to eliminate it as soon as possible. Yes, boomers do need to know this information too. What I'm saying is, I think it takes all of the generations together, because I don't think we are always cognizant of what other generations are seeing online, what they're facing, what their experiences are. And it can be easy to discredit somebody else's experience because you don't see those things that are happening in messaging on a game, or, you know, in a photo app on Snapchat, or, you know, through the Bible app on their phone. Or I know one of the people that had reported to us said that they knew somebody that was being groomed on Pinterest. So my recommendation from that is don't just check the apps that you think could be dangerous. Check any app with a messaging, a friend component, a follower component, any place that they can send you DMs. You get extra points if you know what a DM is. Let us know in the comments if you can say what a DM is. And then we'll kind of get back to our 2022 federal human trafficking report. So I wanted to go over this with you to kind of get a lay of the land and go, what is happening in the United States? Why is this important? How do we move forward from where we are at today in order to do better and better curriculum, better and better awareness events? And how do we actually begin to prevent trafficking across the nation and eventually across the world? Because, you know, we don't want to stop here, but we do want to start at home. All right, so I am going to share my screen. And let's see here. So let me know if you guys can see that. Yes, no, awesome. All right, so definitely put in the comments. Ooh, that's weird. Why is it off to one side? Is it off to one side for you guys too? All right. Oh, okay. I guess the format they'd sent it to me in was kind of a two-parter. So one of the first things I wanted to go over is the executive summary. So this report is actually available online if you go to, let me show you. Let's see here. It's the Human Trafficking Institute. And if you go to their website, you can actually download this for free. There is no cost for this. So if you want to have this information for yourself, please go there, support them. This is as much information as we can gather from those who have reported trafficking here in the United States in 2022. So we can start to see what our trends are. All right. So you what?
I was thinking there's a way to.
How do I get rid of that? Viewing. Nope, won't change it. All right. So in the United States, we had 5 forced labor cases, 178 sex trafficking cases, and notably things that you are not seeing here that should be reported and we're not seeing any reports of are infant trafficking and organ trafficking, because both of those things also happen in the United States. One of the things that is difficult when you're looking at labor cases are a lot of times it looks like they're just working. You know, being able to identify or even talk to somebody, build relationship with someone in order to let them know, hey, are you getting paid? You know, do you have a safe place? Are they withholding, you know, paychecks, documentation? Are you trying to work off some sort of a debt? Those types of things can be really awkward to ask somebody, because in the United States, we don't usually ask other people, hey, are you getting paid? How much money are you making? Are you, do you feel safe in your workplace? So we're grateful that there were any forced labor cases that were brought up, because we know that this is prevalent, even for people that are not foreign citizens. Even Americans get taken advantage of in some of these forced labor schemes. And we want to see more and more cases. So one of the things that stood out to me was the number of cases that were reported were actually a decrease in 2022 from 2021. So we had a 10% decrease in reports of people who had been trafficked or exploited in 2022. Why is that concerning? People get really up in arms when they're looking at these statistics and they're saying, oh, this state isn't safe, like where I am, which is Florida. They're like, oh, Florida isn't safe. It's number 3 in the nation for human trafficking. My concern to you is, what's happening if people aren't reporting? There are, we'll see that later, but there is not a single state in the United States that does not have a convicted trafficking case in 2022. That means that if you guys don't have reports of trafficking, it means that trafficking is going unreported and victims are being unsupported, or they're not able to get out. They're not being recognized. They're not getting the supports around them to be free, and they're not able to get out. I mean, that's scary if you think about it. All right. So wanted to go further into this. Whew. I love this. It's all wonky. There we go. Finally figured out how to get that bar across the top gone. All right. So one of the ways that we are seeing a trend that is beneficial to all of us that are here, that is indicative of those that are learning more about human trafficking and how to prevent it, are the number of people that are actually being charged and having those charges increase. Now, originally, there were so many states in the nation that did not even have laws on the books that made trafficking another person illegal. So we're seeing that trend change. We're seeing laws be put on the books in each state. There are still a All right. Let me know if you can hear me. All right. Well, one of the things that I did want to mention is that, trafficking, as the understanding that we have today, really wasn't talked about until the early 2000s. So, while there has been trafficking for years, decades, generations, it's not like it was something that people were actually always aware that they could do something about or exactly what it was, especially the most recent forms of trafficking, which is the sexual exploitation, sex trafficking, labor trafficking. In modern day times, if somebody would have said, "You don't know what a DM is?" Yes, a DM is a direct message. That's funny. So let me know the last thing you guys heard, because I'm not exactly sure when the internet went out, and I'll kind of try to go back to. So now's the quiz. How long can you remember what somebody was talking about? Exactly. Exactly. All right. So I am going to be sharing my screen again. All right. All right. Let me know if you guys can see that and if we're all good there. All right. Perfect. Yes. So you're seeing just the right side. Okay. So okay, we're good? Great. I was just waiting to see. All right, so one of the new trends that we did see in 2022 that I am very excited about, and I think this will help us tremendously so that people aren't able to hide their trafficking, just like they launder money, laundering all of the things around human trafficking through entities such as a hotel, a business, those sort of things. So we did see a hotel that was charged with human trafficking in 2022. As far as I'm aware, there are at least 2 cases being brought against hotels that were complicit in trafficking, turned a blind eye to trafficking, were okay in taking the money for that. And we are seeing more of a social, what is it? Disgruntlement over companies that are profiting off of the backs of other Americans and even people around the world. So let me know if you guys had actually heard about that case that hotel was charged. Did you hear about that? While we were waiting for your lovely responses, I did want to highlight the most commonly identified methods of referrals in trafficking cases. Most of the people that were effectively identified were referred to someplace like the National Human Trafficking Hotline, the National Center for Missing or Exploited Children, to law enforcement, these different places that are actively in the fight to end trafficking were referred by family members, the victims themselves actually calling in and asking questions, sometimes even over a long time, setting up a plan to be able to extract themselves. Sometimes it's through a task force. And we are very fortunate to live in a time where there are task force in effect, I think almost in every state, or most of the United States is covered in some form or fashion by a task force. We're also seeing more referrals by medical personnel. So one of the ways that we're seeing this come up more and more where medical personnel are able to identify, they're able to ask questions, is by continuing education credits being required to include anti-trafficking education models. So if you're somebody that works in a field that requires continuing education credits, let me know what your requirements are to take, anti-trafficking, human trafficking prevention, even trauma-informed care, victim-centered services, those types of things. Let me know in the comments what you guys are actually seeing being required for your types of employment. Anonymous tips were there. Obviously, there's the hotlines, social workers. I mean, it was enough that, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was listed as one of the most commonly identified methods of referral in the United States last year. And another one was a neighbor. How many of you know your neighbors? Do you know the vehicles that are supposed to belong in your neighborhood? I'm going to be real honest and show my millennialness. I don't generally know my neighbors. I probably could identify a face if I had to. I am notoriously forgetful when it comes to whose cars or what other people drive. Like even at one of my recent jobs, my boss would be like, "Oh, well, I knew who was here based on whose car was out front." And I was like, I literally never pay attention to the car that they drive to be able to look in the parking lot and see, oh, so-and-so's here because they drive this car. But neighbors that know what cars belong in your neighborhood, what area or what people are in a driveway that maybe they don't belong in, or things like that, being able to refer just things that stand out in your neighborhood. It's almost unheard of. Didn't it used to be that people would have like neighborhood watch and stuff like that? So let me know if you guys were ever part of a neighborhood watch or if you are currently part of a neighborhood watch. Are you adding any of these questions? Okay. All right. Perfect. So just like we've been talking about, as you're looking at these numbers, the most common method that traffickers are using to solicit buyers of sex is through the internet. 53% of people that are being sex trafficked are being contacted through the internet, being trafficked through the internet. That means we have a lot of work to do in our internet safety, and we have a lot to do as far as regulation and censoring some of these sites. And then of the 347 sex trafficking victims in cases that were filed in 2022, 16% were recruited on the internet as well. Now, I think that number is probably a lot higher, but I also know that depending on the age of the person, they're not looking at it and going, oh, I was recruited on the internet. They're probably thinking I was recruited in an online game, or I was recruited through an app on my phone. So they're not looking at it and going, yeah, that's the internet. So you have to look at, perspective of what people would think of it in their own term. You guys can see the length of exploitation that's there. And even one day is too many. We know that the number there says 341 days. That's the amount of time somebody was trafficked. I cannot share with you the amount of trauma that can happen in 24 hours, let alone almost a year of this. They do tend to say that most people, if they're being trafficked beyond that 7th year, usually end up dying. That's a crazy, crazy thing to hear or to know. And we're hoping that by these types of things, we're able to eliminate that people would not be in these types of things at all. They'd be completely prevented. All right. Who guessed the most common forms of payment? Anybody? Anybody? Right? So Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal are the most common ways that people are sending in their money when they are purchasing human trafficking victims.
This is
Hmm?
sex trafficking or all
No, this is just specifically sex trafficking. Yeah, that's a good question. So she was asking, does this include all types of trafficking, or is this specifically for sex trafficking? This one is specifically sex trafficking. And I am curious, why on earth do you guys think that Uber is more common for them transporting sex trafficking victims more than Lyft? Let me know in the comments why you think that is. I mean, I understand the buses because, buses are usually really cheap. Most people are trying to, keep their stuff with them and stay out of everybody's way. But so
I don't really see there. But maybe Uber is just an easier rideshare app.
well, maybe
I don't
it's
know.
in more locations too. It's possible. All right. So I do want to highlight this about the industries identified in forced labor cases. So while we have no reporting of infant trafficking or organ trafficking, I still want to remind people that there were only 5% of cases that were labor cases that were identified. So of those cases, the types of people that were working were people in domestic work, agriculture, or farming. And I'm going to say, I grew up in an area where, it never occurred to me that we always knew that there was migrant farm workers, but in my head, I never thought that that could be part of forced labor, or that there could be people that were being used to harvest our crops that are not being paid fairly, that may have been smuggled into the country. They may be working to try to pay off a debt of somebody getting them in, and some of them aren't making any money at all. It is also common for those who are already being exploited in labor trafficking to also be exploited in sex trafficking.
What were the other cases?
Sorry,
What were the other cases?
sex trafficking.
No, I mean, you said domestic work, agriculture.
Okay, restaurant or food service, construction, bars, clubs, or cantinas, hotel or hospitality, factory work, beauty services, medical or health services, and massage parlors. All right, so list one of those that surprised you, because I'm going to go with medical or health services being my most surprising statistic for those that are in forced labor. When people are talking about recruiters in trafficking cases, this is specifically, and I know that language sometimes is confusing, but these are people that have been at least have charges filed against them in human trafficking cases in 2022. 96% of the defendants that were brought were recruiters into trafficking. And, you know, so we have this idea of how people are getting trafficked, right? And we're thinking to ourselves, oh, it's like the movie Taken. You know, it's these, you know, big bad organizations that are trafficking people. And what I will say to you is this: the people that are trafficking people are other people.
Mhm.
It's people that have access to you. It's people that have a need that they can identify that they're exploiting. How many of you have a need? I have needs. I want to connect to people. I want to belong to people. I want to know that, you know, I have friends, or, you know, even through online dating, I'm looking for a romantic partner. All of those things, any one of those needs could be exploited at any time. And that makes every one of us vulnerable in some level to trafficking. Whether or not we would ever be trafficked is completely different. But it's not a respecter of persons. It used to be that we always thought that, you know, people that were being trafficked were because they were poor, or because they were, you know, from out of the United States and they didn't have any rights or things like that. It is just as common now for there to be Americans that are exploiting or trafficking other Americans right here in the United States. All right. So see, I'm trying to find page 2. Next page. So one of the areas that they did a great job in putting this report together, which this report is really long. If you look at it, it's like 130 some pages. But what they were trying to figure out were, what are the indicators of human trafficking in the United States, and how are people being recruited? What does that process look like? So we can begin to dismantle this on-ramp into trafficking, right? So we're grateful for the work that they're doing. We're grateful that they actually took the time to put this together. I can only imagine if it takes them 6 months to put together the data for 2022, how much they had to read through to condense it down to just 130 some pages. All right, so this has got some funky. All right. Of the 54 cases that were both filed and disposed of in the court system at the end of the 2022 calendar year, we have a much smaller number of cases from 2022 at 183 than we've had in several years. The thing that I don't want you to take from this is that that's a good thing. That doesn't mean that less people are being trafficked. It means that less people are reporting it. It means less people are able to file charges. And I do want to caution you when you're thinking about this, just because we have these cases that are coming out from 2022, the average person in the United States does not get their case heard for 5 years from when they were trafficked. 5 years. Think about that. If you have gotten out of a situation like this, let's say you're safe and you're home and you have a loving family that supports you, you're able to access supports, you know, you're able to stabilize in housing, those sort of things. Most court cases require you to release your place of residence, to face your trafficker face to face. So when we're looking at this, I'm concerned about that number going down, because you know, we haven't even gotten 5 years out from those that were trafficked or exploited during the pandemic. It'll be interesting to watch what the trends are. The way that you kind of watch a train wreck, it seems to go in slow motion in your brain. There are still a number of cases pending. And if you look at this, it says the number of pending trafficking cases at the end of 2021 was 886. So that means those are the cases that are still waiting. And that goes back to that number. It can take up to 5 years for people. And if you're not a US citizen, they said the average for those cases are 10 years. Wow. All right. Let's see here. Sorry. Keep going. So I do want to look at the case types. So in 2022, 97% of the 183 new criminal cases that were filed included at least one charge for sex trafficking. The remaining 3%, which was just 5 cases, involved at least one charge of forced labor. While cases can involve both sex trafficking and forced labor, there were no cases in 2022 containing both types of charges. Let's see here. But it does say the number of new forced labor cases decreased in 2022 from 2021, and the number of sex trafficking cases decreased by 23%. That's a crazy number. And then the number of forced labor cases decreased by 50%. That's a huge decrease. So that means in 2021, only 10 cases were brought fighting forced labor. All right, so are you guys seeing these trends? Do you have questions about what's going on? I was hoping to kind of be able to get into some of the details of what we know about the victims in these cases, which I need to get down to page 32. All of this, this was one of the things I wanted to share. All right. This is the map of where convictions happened, I believe. Hold on. Case type filed by district. So in 2022, 64 of the 94 federal districts initiated at least one human trafficking case in 2022. This is a 10% decrease in the number of districts who filed a human trafficking case in 2021, down from 71 districts. All right. So this number is lower, right? Ooh, sorry. Are you able to see the map? Mm-hmm. Okay. This number is lower, but I want you guys to look at these places. These are not necessarily just places with large populations. These are places out in the middle of nowhere. Like, who in their right mind would look at Missouri and think, yes, Missouri had 12 cases filed in trafficking. And that was all sex trafficking. Missouri.
St. Louis, Kansas City.
True. Anyways, let me know what you think. Or were you surprised by your state? I'm going to give you guys a second to look at this because I know sometimes I can start to move on and you can't really respond if you can't see what's going on. So the difference here is that we had 17 cases filed in Florida, which is pretty good. That's really good. And that's why you see people that talk about, Florida as number 3 or listed as number 3 as the worst for human trafficking. The reality is there's more cases being filed. There's more victims being identified. That means there has been education consistently so that people know what they're looking for. So there's people that are taking action. They're calling in, they're reporting. Do you guys know that it's okay if you report something that looks like trafficking and it gets investigated and it's not trafficking? Most people are so afraid of being wrong, they're not willing to make a call. Don't be one of those people. I know it's super common in like little kid stuff where they say, see something, say something. But really, even as adults, I want to encourage you. If you see something, report it to the human trafficking hotline, report it to the National Center for Missing or Exploited Children, and let's get these things put in front of the people that can actually look into the case. They can actually see, hey, are we noticing a pattern here? Are we seeing something that's funny? Because law enforcement can't be everywhere. They just can't. But we are. We're in our towns. We're in our neighborhoods. We're seeing who's around us all the time. And it's okay to report something even if it's not accurate, as long as we're getting that to people that can actually investigate. Because let's be honest, we do not recommend personal investigations. We do not recommend taking these things into our own hands. We know that Sound of Freedom looks really good, right? You know, but he was part of Homeland Security. He was highly trained, and he was under the supervision of somebody, at least for most of that, not just a law unto himself. All right. Do we have any questions I've missed? Or
No.
all right. So, all right. Man. So if we're tracking back, we're looking at the section 2, which is the defendants, and these are specifically new defendants charged, and new cases, right? So if we're expecting this to be cases from 5 years ago, in 2020, while the court systems were severely hindered, okay, we had 283 new cases filed with 389 defendants charged. That means those cases where the people were charged, those were filed usually back 5 years before that. That's 2015, right? My math is mathing. The people that were being charged in 2021, a lot of those cases were, 2016 or before. So when we're seeing this, I'm concerned about, that number going down. The wait for people getting justice is going up based on, court systems being largely shuttered during lockdowns and things like that. All right, so let me keep going here. I lost my thing. All right, so this is a history of defendants over the years. So I'm going to give you guys a second to kind of look that over. Let me kind of scroll up just a smidge. Nope, that number's not up at the top anyway. Okay. All right, so these are new criminal defendants over the last 22 years. And you can see, even at, some of the height of being able to address even labor trafficking, we're still only seeing defendants being at like 54 last year. It's a lot of people, especially when domestic work is very common as one of the ways that people are being trafficked. But I do want to caution you guys, if you think that you're not a part of this or that you're not consuming goods that are utilizing forced labor, I want you to think about, where do you buy your clothes? Where are you purchasing your food? I know that I've had many people really upset that I've supported Target in the midst of some of their recent choices in product. But I just want to remind people of this. Target is more likely to pay people a living wage, to give them access to benefits, paid time off, medical, and even dental care. So when you're thinking about that, we've had a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm going to the blue store. That's the big box store. I do want to remind you, just because they're there doesn't mean that they're paying their people a living wage. Look up the number of cases where people's pay was withheld. Sometimes they didn't get that money until they sued the company. Where they intentionally keep people on part-time or irregular schedules so that they aren't able to get consistent childcare, or they're not able to have regular days off in order to handle life business, things like that. So, and sometimes even where the products are coming from. Why is it cheaper? If you're paying pennies on the dollar, who isn't being paid for the item that you're wearing, for the item that you're using? So these are just rhetorical questions. I'm not expecting anybody to out themselves, but this is food for thought, because if you haven't thought of yourself as a trafficker, this is maybe one of those times you have to look in the mirror and go, am I part of trafficking? Crazy. All right. All right. So of the cases that were tried in 2022, there were only, less than 1% were entity defendants. So that is the hotel case. 99% of the defendants in 2022 were individuals. And I don't think that that necessarily means that we're doing that good of a job. I think that that means we're not taking down the systems that are supporting trafficking. We're taking down the low men on totem pole. It's just like in any sort of organized crime, we're finding that most people are only getting the low level people. These are the people that don't know as much about the entity, that aren't able to share, and oftentimes would be quote unquote better defendants because they don't have prior charges. They're going to get less time, that sort of thing. All right. Oh, I didn't know. Did you know that there was an agricultural company that was charged with trafficking in 2021? Interesting. So we do want to see those things continue to at least be identified and charges brought if needed. Obviously, we want there to be good businesses and good business practices, but we do have to look at our business practices or expectations for low prices driving forced labor or sex trafficking or both here in the United States. All right. Now we're going to move into specifically sex trafficking defendants by victim type. All right. So these are the number of defendants, and I really want to drive this home. As you're looking over in the bottom right here, where you see the 3 circles with the gray and the blue and with the aqua blue kind of teal color. Do you see that? All right. So of the defendants, these buyer defendants in sex trafficking cases, we had 13% that are women. Whose mind is blown right now? Who has had a belief system that if you're a woman, you must be safe for kids? All right. So when we look at that, we're looking at this compared to the fact that right above that chart, it lists at least the expected age of the victims, right? So 31% of the people that were sex trafficked last year in a case that was actually charged, where we were able to know their age, 31% were specifically minors. 21% were fictitious victims. That also means they expected them to be minors when they got there. 11% were minor and adult victims, or unknown victims. So we're looking at these numbers and we're going, okay, maybe they were on the edge and they didn't specifically delineate that they're over 18. So now they're an adult. We're talking about this. We're talking about kids. Even if somebody is 18 years old, how many of us made some dumb decision at 18 and we're just grateful that somebody wasn't there to traffic us or exploit us? Maybe they were just looking for, room to rent, place to stay, somewhere to land, a good friend. Or here in the United States, it's very often to have what they call Romeo trafficking. I'm going to ask you guys to see what you think. Who knows what Romeo trafficking is? Put that in the comments. That's crazy. So in 2022, the defendants ranged in age from 19 to 76 years old at the time of arrest. I don't think it has a breakdown here in just the diagrams or whatever, but I know that they do go into detail here in some of the defendant demographics of who were caught in sting operations with fictitious victims. But you can see the ages that they are. We personally here have a very interesting sheriff, and our very interesting sheriff likes to have press conferences. So let us know if you've heard of Sheriff Grady. Does anybody have a definition for Romeo trafficking? No idea. All right. So I do want to respond to that because I do want people to know. Romeo trafficking is where you believe that you are getting into a relationship with somebody who wants to be a romantic partner for you. That means, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, something like that. And they, through time, it's not always immediate. Usually this takes quite a while. They begin to put you in situations where you are being exploited or trafficked in some way. And in this case, it's specifically talking about sex trafficking, which means they're asking you to sleep with somebody else for, it could be as simple as prestige or a game. I know there was one person that I talked to that him and his buddies had a game that they played to see how many times they could get their girlfriend to sleep with somebody else just because of asking her to. And it's not specific to female victims, so I don't want to give that impression, but that's not a game. That's not a game. All right. So who expected that to be the answer for Romeo trafficking? All right. So I want to be mindful of you guys' time. I do want to kind of share some of this. All right. So out of at least it's my understanding, that there were several sex offenders that were on the sex offender registry at the time of arrest for some of these stings. So these are people that are reoffending. It's crazy. All right. One critical component to the federal response to criminal human trafficking defendants in 2022 is identifying as current trafficking and crime in general is the ability to measure deterrence, meaning considering the relative newness of federal and state commercial sex, human trafficking statutes, which, there has to be laws on the books for this to be criminalized. Very little data on recidivism among traffickers exists. So we're seeing, it looks like a very small number, but that's crazy. The fact that they're able to reoffend and they're they're getting out. Because a lot of times in states where they didn't have human trafficking on the books, they would get a rape charge. And most of the time they would get time served before their case, which means before they got bailed out. So it could be hours. It could be just a few days. Sometimes if it was their first charge, you know, they were getting a couple months of community service without ever actually going to prison. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be in prison. What I am saying is we want to make sure that their punishment fits the crime. All right. The top locations of defendants' arrests are in hotels. And then residences. So I wonder if they're including residences as Airbnbs. What do you think? Because technically they are a private residence. And this is, I'm looking at the chart specifically, I'm sorry, from 2019 to 2022. So this is not just last year's data. It does include traffic stops, restaurants, parking lots, gas stations, airport, mall, park, or a church. I do want to highlight this. So those that have said, you know, churches are safe places, you should know who are your children talking to, even if they're at church. Are they grooming children? And you can go back and look at what Luca and Sabina had said about different things that they saw or experienced. And I know that they've been in and out of church situations too. Well, the sun's finally coming out. Yay! Hopefully that means we won't lose internet again. All right. So I'm probably going to stop there because at this point, I'm sure I am droning on. And let me minimize that. So I'm going to come back to you guys. So I do want to let you know that we will have this report is available on the Human Trafficking Institute's website. Like I said, it is available for free. They do ask for your email, but I've been on their email list for a long time. I have not found there to be a lot of spam emails or things like that. So we're not sending you to some crazy town place that's going to email you every 5 seconds. But if you guys would like to join us for the webinar, go to the Safe and Sound page on our website and make sure you register, because we will be sending that link out to those who have registered for the event. We don't want to spam those that are not able to attend or aren't interested in the immediate replay, but we will have replays available. You want to help me out? When did we say the replays would come down? Sunday night? A week?
Yeah,
Okay.
It'll go through Wednesday.
All right. So it'll go through next Wednesday. So you guys can share this video. You can comment on the video. You can definitely send it to somebody who maybe they are looking for how do they begin to respond after seeing Sound of Freedom? Maybe they watched the movie Taken. Maybe they're looking at these things and they're going, well, what do we do about it? Invite them to the free challenge, get them educated so they know that they can respond. Maybe they aren't aware that there's a human trafficking hotline. Maybe they don't know that they can look at something and go, oh, my, child received a weird message on Snapchat, an unsolicited picture of an intimate nature. Not only should that be reported to Snapchat, but it should also be reported to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, so it can be investigated. What? Yes. All right. So that is our Pro Power program. So that is one of the things, if you've taken part of the Dad Jokes for Change fundraiser, if you've been one of our partners, if you're one of our sponsors, those funds have been going towards our classrooms
Yes.
for the Pro Power program. And that is specifically a K-8 program that we're going to be able to get in and partner with classrooms, teaching them all different kinds of things. We have a couple of our people that are helping us write the curriculum that are going to be up speaking.
I'm excited.
Yep.
Let's just give a little sneak peek for tomorrow night's session.
Yes.
Which I'm really excited because who are our 2 speakers tomorrow night?
So we have Nicole and Kat. So Nicole is actually somebody who is a trauma therapist, and she has all these really great videos, all these different things that, it can be really scary if you've dealt with trauma or if you've had trauma in the past to know, hey, is this a trauma response? Is this something that's coming up because it's trigger from trauma? And I know in our society, we kind of joke about being triggered or these different things, but we're talking about very serious triggers here. She's going to go through, how do we know what is a trauma response? So maybe you've asked somebody, well, if you felt unsafe, why didn't you say something?
Sometimes your trauma response doesn't allow you to. So I'm looking forward to hearing from her.
Yep.
And our other speaker tomorrow night
is Kat. And she has been a school counselor for many years. I believe it's over 15 years now.
Oh, wow.
Yes. She specifically has worked with little kiddos. She's now working more with middle schoolers, but helping them learn how to make a friend, helping them respond to bullying and those sort of things. And those are all very important things. Most people don't know how to say, I don't really want to be your friend.
Without being mean.
Not even without being
That's
mean.
mean.
How many people here have ever actually told somebody, I don't want to be your friend?
I don't think I've ever.
Yeah,
Nah.
it's very uncommon.
That would be
But
awkward.
we have kids now that are in situations, even at school, where they're having to decide, do I want to be friends with this person? Or, is it unsafe for me to be friends with them for some reason? Whether that is, maybe they have something they're asking of them. Maybe they're, even children sometimes can abuse other children.
Yeah.
Right. So I say that to say, we have a lot of those terms and definitions that are available in our training on our partnership page. So if you would like to be a partner of Bring Freedom, you can join us on the partnership page. We will have specific trainings for you guys that are private every month that you'll be able to attend live. We have our live office hours.
Yes.
So
talk to us live.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. I'm also going to share a short presentation about American consumerism and how that contributes to human trafficking. So, looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow night. I hear the thunder rolling back in, so we'll hop off for tonight. But see you same bad time, same bad channel.
Yes.
Tomorrow night.
Make sure you sign up on the website for tomorrow's link, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Good night.
Good night. My lovely